Okay, how's everybody doing? Okay, in this part three, I want to describe more thoroughly the building of the speaker box, and in this particular episode, building the foot of the speaker box, so that you can get the dimensions basically in spec to fit the long hood or the body of the locomotive. You want to maximize as much space as you can in the airtight box so that you get as good a quality sound as you can get with the available space that's in the locomotive. And in this case, there isn't much at all, but I can show you how much you can gain over the stock speaker mount that it comes with. Okay, so in this particular episode, I want to try and demonstrate some of the process that I use in order to fit a custom speaker enclosure to a particular locomotive, as in this case, it's the Atlas MP15. I want to take advantage of all the space that I can, because the more volume you have in the speaker enclosure, the better the sound. There's no argument there. That's already been proven. And so in this case, I want to build a speaker enclosure to take up all the space that I can without impeding or bumping up against anything, like the decoder and the top of the long hood and so forth. So I want to begin with the bottom here, and you can see that there needs to be enough clearance for the chassis gearbox in here to move around, and there is there. And what I've done is I just dry fit a piece of 40 thou here as far down as I can go to make sure that this is a nice tight fit. Like, it's not glued in place here, but it's not going to move on you, so that you can set up your tolerances. So right here I've packed out this plate with another rail to be flush with here, because I'm going to have another return that goes on like this, see? And this will go up as far as the long hood is. Like, let's just say it goes to there. Well, that means I have all that extra volume air chamber to play with, even if it's only a 1/4 inch deep. You want to create as much air volume inside the box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work backwards towards the decoder first. Now I have 2 pins here, as you can see. They're metal pins built right onto the frame here from the old original mount, which is inadequate for my purposes. But I want to take advantage of those pins to help lock the box in place, because there's still a screw hole there I can take advantage of to hold the speaker in place, which I can probably gain access to from the top of the box before I seal the top. But in this case, I want to build a return to encompass these 2 pins. So what I do is I cut a fairly proud piece, even if it's wider than you want, and make sure it's longer, but make sure you line up the 2 holes and drill those first so that they sit on top of those 2 pins, and then you can glue it to this bottom plate here. You just flood the cement in there, and then you can clamp that down. Like, I usually grab it with pliers like that and just squeeze it, and then when this is set, for the purposes of, let's just say it's glued on there, I can now cut that flush from the back here. So now I have the return in place, right? So I've got my bottom base piece. Let me pop that in. Get the bottom base piece in place. I've got this return taking advantage of the 2 pins. You can see the space between the soldering tabs and this return piece. There's just enough there, so when I add a back piece like this, right, which on this, let me turn the model here so you can see it better. So when I add this piece like that, see, you build the bottom profile and the back and the front first. Okay, so once we have the foot of the speaker box established, and you can see we have our inner profile here for the sides, we just take another piece of 30 thou plastic, leave a little bit on the outside of the length of it, like we'll worry about the length later, and you just get this profile established. Make 2 of these. like that. Okay, so here's an alternative to gluing the plates onto the side of the speaker box base that you can do other than cutting a plug plate to fit into this profile, which seems like extra work. Well, why don't I just glue it straight onto the edge like that? Well, you can if you want and then clean it up later, but now you're going to have a wider box that won't fit under the long hood of the locomotive body. Unless, of course, you factored in minus 30 thou from each side, which is the thickness of this material, right? But you got to think of that first. But in this case, I want to just build a plug so that I don't cut away the register holes here for on the frame that I've already established. If I just cap the sides after removing 30 thou from each side, I'm going to lose those holes. You know, which is okay if you just want to epoxy the speaker box onto the frame, but I want to try to have the speaker box so it's removable through that screw that I mentioned earlier, through a piece of tubing from the top. So I'll show you that in the next upload, how I do that, in case I want to service that truck. But if you figure you're not going to need to service the truck on the locomotive, then just epoxy the speaker box right onto the frame and you'll probably be good to go for the life of the locomotive. But you never know. Okay, so you can do a plug plate like that, or you can just cap the plate on the side like that if you build this base minus another 60 thou wide. Okay, so now that I have the foot of the speaker box established here, as you can see, everything fits good and slides on nice. Now I can establish the height of the sides and the end plates for the speaker box enclosure. I'll build them or cut them a little proud so that I can shave them down and take full advantage of the cavity space here. And speaking of the cavity space, there's one other feature I want to point out. With this particular model, you can see there's quite a thick plastic plug here. And then there's the photo etch screen over top, which is nice. But I don't need this plug because this takes up a lot of precious space for that speaker box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend those tabs out and just pull that photo etched off of there easily enough. And then what I'll do is when the speaker box is finished, I'll just airbrush it flat black like the frame and then pop the photo etch piece back in with a spot or two of CA just to tack it in place. Okay, so in order to remove this photo etch screen away from this plug, you just flip it over and there's these little knobbies that were up through the tab here. They've been melted over just to hold it in place. Just take a knife like that and just trim them off. And the tab just pops. See? The whole unit will just pop right off. It's not glued on, so. Okay, so once you nibbled off those little knobbies there from the tabs, you just bend from one side. You just lift and pull them over the side like that, and then just slide that plug out. And then notice how the plug it's just painted satin black there. I mean, that's what the top of your speaker box will look like if you just airbrush it. The speakers are going to be facing inwards and going to be airtight, so you can just airbrush the top of the box, and it's going to look like that anyway. So now you have all that extra room underneath this photo etched grill here. Okay, so why all the trouble? Well, as you can see, I've gained probably more than 50% capacity for speaker space. And anyone knows in this game that the larger the speaker box, the better bass sound you're going to get. And you're going to take advantage of the integrity that's already built into the very latest decoders. I don't see why you would just put in a really top of the line decoder and then not try to take advantage of its power amp, which drives the speakers. So the actual speaker enclosure is just as important as anything else if we want really good quality sound in our HO scale or any other scale for that matter locomotives. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next upload.